here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat. Bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
What do you how would you describe the difference? So in your book, you talk about the male gaze is different than the individual men's gaze. How would you describe that to somebody? So to support individuals reconstructing that in their own minds.
The male gaze is a societal gaze that is shown in the media, where women's bodies are commodities, where like a narrow beauty ideal is shown. Where attraction to women, and usually thin, white, curvy, able-bodied women, cisgender women, is considered the norm, and anything outside that norm is considered abnormal. If an individual man is attracted to women and has sexual feelings toward her, like, I don't think that's necessarily the male gaze. And I think some women like being gazed on by men. I think or just by people in general. Mm-hmm. And that's not a problem if you're acknowledging that she is a full person and that her attractiveness is one thing about her. And you're also interested in her desires and what she's gazing at and what she likes to gaze at. So an individual man's gaze outside the societal male gaze would be more multidimensional and more acknowledging all the things that person is and respecting her consent and her desire. And also owning your own desire and not considering it like the one desire that is better than other people's.
Okay, that makes sense. And it comes into this, I'd love to jam on this concept from there of I'm very present in I guess really this happens in all sex, or it can happen in many different sex positive communities, but the BDSM community, there's a part of me that loves to be objectified. There's a part of me that loves to have, the parts of me being worshipped or really, talked about by my partners, or like, I love being pervy, it makes me excited. It's like, so how can we, do you perceive that there's space for loving objectification? Or that's the word that I use for myself. I don't even know if that's true, or if that's like a common term, but how can we, have space for these parts of us that might like that, and while also understanding the cultural objectification and what might be different about those?
Yeah, I talk about that too. There's a chapter about pubic hair. Well, the one in sex work also talks about that, but about how I thought that like removing pubic hair was just coming from internalization of the male gaze. And then I did it myself, and I was like, I still think it's, personally for me, I enjoyed being gazed at, probably because of the male gaze, but I still enjoyed it. And the conclusion I came to is basically, if we can find enjoyment in something, like we should not like restrict our pleasure just to stick it to the patriarchy. And I think the difference is that if a loving objectification would be, you want to be objectified, you've made that clear. And again, they also care about you and your desires and the other parts of you, maybe not in that moment. Like if there's a specific like scene where you just want to be called a slut or whatever, but then outside of that, hopefully they would care about you and see more about you. And
maybe it's because that never leaves. It's like you're playing out this experience, but there's an underlying knowing that they love me for all of me. Because like if they come up and jiggle my booty, I'm like, yeah, and knowing that they do hold all of me into consideration, and that doesn't go anywhere just because they jiggle my booty and I squeal.
I love that. I say it like at the end of the book, a true subject is someone who feels comfortable being an object because she's that
Mm.
secure that she knows she's not going to lose her subjecthood. And even I am a little bit triggered by the thought of jiggling my booty for someone. So maybe I have work to do on that. It's really hard to separate that out from your social conditioning and your objectification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all have, and that's the interesting piece too. We all have these different upbringings, different meanings, different understandings. And how do we create space for all of these to be okay? And learning the nuances of when we're just adopting something that's cultural versus what's something that is true for us.
I don't know if you can always separate them. I think sometimes what's cultural becomes true for us because it just gets into your mind. Like personally, I I get off to the thought of like somebody getting really turned on by my boobs, which is interesting because I really hated that. And would I feel that way? Would I feel either way were it not for the male gaze? I don't know. But I think it's just about tuning to your body and asking, does this give me pleasure? Does this make me uncomfortable? Does this
Mm-hmm.
feel like a hell yes? How do I feel after this? Do I feel used in a bad way? Or
Mm-hmm.
do I feel happy? Do I have an extra skip in my step? Like, your mind can't really tell you exactly what you consent to. I think it's about tuning into your body and your emotions.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.